Zainul Abidin.
Yes, sir.
Every lecture is the case. So if you see the syllabus, what we have covered up to now, we have covered this first module. Second module we have covered flood, flash floods, and cloud bursts. Today what we are going to study is we'll study the drought. Is the screen visible?
Yes, sir.
Today we are going to discuss about drought, earthquake, and if possible, if time is left, we'll discuss about tsunami. But I don't think it would be because already we are late by 10 minutes. Fine, we'll see. So we'll start with droughts. So what is drought? Actually, drought is, you can say, absence of moisture, absence of water in a particular environment, severe compounding problems, heat waves. Yeah. Anybody else?
Sir, sir, your voice is lagging,
हाँ
sir.
बोलो.
सर आपकी आवाज
Yes.
कट रही है. Your voice is lagging, sir.
आवाज.
कट रही है, आपकी कट रही है.
Voice is breaking.
Yes,
आवाज कट रही है.
yes, sir.
There is some issue at my place, network issue. Okay, I will try to go slow so that you can just collect the words. So, the heat stresses, several thousand people die each year worldwide from heat stress. Most deaths occur in North America, in the interior city. Of course, in India also many deaths are there, especially in the Rajasthan belt, Rajasthan, Kutch, and interior Indian belt, that is eastern Maharashtra and Madhya Pradesh and all these belts, rather Chhattisgarh and all. So there is a severe drought. Severe urban pollution may be contributing factor. The voice is proper. At least you are able to hear.
Yes, sir.
Fine.
Yes, sir. Now it's clear.
Okay. So heat waves and heat disorders at temperatures above the body's core. Now, normal temperature generally it is 36 point, in the range of 36 to 37 generally. So if the temperature above the body's core temperature, heat must be dissipated. That means heat must be, because what will happen if we are living in an environment, our outside environment should be lesser than our body environment. Otherwise, what will happen? It will not be possible for us, because look, our internal environment, it is not, if it is above, if the internal environment is below the outside environment, what will happen is we will have certain we can say with certain internal problems which will lead to, we can say, which will lead to many medical disorders, or you can say medical problems, because we will not be able to, our body metabolism or body, you can say, mechanism which is going on, which is the production of, you can say, pumping of blood and all, this will become very much, it will be very much disorganized. So 90% of heat loss occurs through our skin due to our various activities of our body. Our heat loss should be carried out, but if the outside temperature itself is higher than our body temperature, so there is a problem. Sweating becomes less effective at high. This RH is a term which is used for, you can say, the heat, you can say heat, resident heat, or some sort of heat. Hence the increase in apparent temperature. If the heat gain exceeds the heat loss, body core temperature rises and heat disorders occur. sunburn can retard the body's ability to shed heat and may increase the severity of the heat disorder. You can just see the heat human tolerance of high temperatures. You can see this is the apparent temperature. So you can see the temperature as it is increases the relative humidity. Okay, this RH is relative humidity. So the relative humidity of our body or heat index chart apparent temperature, the relative humidity of our body means we are at extreme danger because we cannot. Our relative humidity means the humidity between the two objects. Na? So our body and the outside temperature will not be able to exchange the, you can say, exchange the heat, and it will lead to what? It will lead to severe compounding problems. So heat disorders and apparent temperature above 50 degrees Celsius, if the temperature is there, it may lead to heat stroke. It may lead to heat stroke, sunstroke with continued exposure. Am I clearly audible now?
Yes, sir.
Fine. 40 to 50 degrees Celsius sunstroke is there, heat cramps likely, and heat stroke possible with prolonged exposure and or physical activity. Then 35 to 37 degrees, still it is high, but it is manageable. Sunstrokes may be there, especially in people having comorbidity or some other diseases, heat cramps, heat strokes. Therefore, na, these people, whenever you see sportsmen, na, they are there in the field, na, those who are there in outdoor sports, often they get cramps and all. Na. Why? Because generally they carry out activities in, and their body are exposed to these high temperatures. Prolonged exposure on physical activity may lead to these all problems. And 30 to 34 degrees there, which we experience in Mumbai also in the summer season, fatigue possible with proper prolonged exposure and all physical activities. So heat disorders increase with age. Individuals at 20 years heat cramps are there, 40 years heat exhaustion is there, above 60 years there is heat strokes and all that. So as the you can say age increases, the resistivity or rather the vulnerability increases, the resistivity decreases, and hence we are more likely to be affected by the heat. You can see normal temperature three times. If we say generally 25 to 27 degrees Celsius is considered as the normal temperature. So if the mortality rates are increased, if the temperature is increased, you can see around 25 the mortality rate and the heat mortality rate, general mortality and heat mortality is more or less same. But as the temperature increases, three times as many people die extremely hot days than on normal days. You can just compare. If say here 100 people die, yeah, so almost 300 people die if the temperature is more. So heat wave in Europe, there was a very, you can say, pronounced heat wave in 2003. You can see the fatalities in France, Germany, Italy, and all these countries because they were not in India. We are, you can say, human beings in India or humans are Indian. Even animals are quite, you can say, they are quite robust and they can, you can say, their resistance is quite high. That's why na, it's often here in news na, and in this pandemic the mortality rate, even the cases are quite high, but the mortality rate in India is quite less as compared to the European and all other countries. If you just see the death chart na, in India around you can say 40,000 people by now have lost their lives in this pandemic. But if you just compare with Italy and all, na, having a very small population as compared to India, their loss of life, even if their cases were substantially lower than us, there were around 3 to 4 lakh cases only in the entire pandemic. In India, we have around 18 lakh cases, but the death rate or the deaths which have occurred in India are substantially lesser as compared to the deaths which occurred in those countries. Why? Because in India we are quite resistant, or we know we our body has adopted to a certain, you can say, resistance to the various you can say various changing climatic conditions. So hence even if slight change in temperature and this is there, so these people, or you can say especially the vulnerable group, are not able to bear with the, you can say, consequences. So Germany recorded mean temperature just 3 degree rise was there. So it lead to a lot more fatalities. So this was just in one in a 500-year extreme event which occurred. So it was a foretaste of this carbon, you can say, CO2 emissions or summers in the mid 20th century. So this is a this you can say prelude of what is going to happen, because we are contributing to the global climate change to a very large extent. This is again some temperature prediction which was there for US countries. So California, again the city is there. So all over the world some studies are being done. So heat waves, drought and wildfires occur frequently co-occur. Means what happens if the heat waves and all are there? If you see, generally the bushfires and Amazon bushfires, and again in Australia many bushfires and all are there. Wildfires are there. So why? Because of the prolonged heat waves and all these things occur. Because what happens generally, the climate, the environment becomes dry, and generally when the trees and all fall, generally how these bushfires and all are created? Because when the trees, high tall trees, when they fall, they just collide against one another, or you can just say they just brush each other, and what happens is a fire is produced. And if it is, you can say, a dry or arid region, the fire spreads. If it is a wet region, or generally where there is greenery, the fire won't spread because the moisture would just extinguish the fire. But in case of arid regions, what happens? This compounding problem becomes very pronounced. It is not so in our particular region in Mumbai and say Western Maharashtra and all, but it is more pronounced if you go to the northern India, especially in the western or you can say Rajasthan and all. This belt is there, and even the Kutch and even the central India. This problem, not the forest fires, but the heat waves and drought are a common phenomenon. So technically, if you speak, look, you can expect in the exam what you can expect, because again, this particular chapter, this particular module, it has several submodules. So we cannot predict what can be asked. So a question likely on drought is quite, the chances are quite less. Why? Because it is not that pronounced in the Mumbai region, but still you should be prepared. More questions we can expect on flood, earthquakes, tsunami, and this likely pandemic and man-made disasters. Yesterday also we saw a man-made disaster which occurred in Lebanon, Beirut. I will share the videos of that because some videos are very disturbing. That if I did not share yesterday, but still you should get you can say get an idea of how the natural activities, or sorry, man-made activities can lead to certain disasters. So drought, a protracted period. It is not a sudden phenomena as a flood or say an earthquake. It is a protracted period of deficient precipitation. Deficient precipitation means the rainfall itself is quite low, resulting in extensive damage to crops, resulting in loss in yield. In India, especially the famine, the Bengal famine, it is quite famous. It occurred in the 19th century during the British. Many people, around 50 lakh people, lost their lives. Why? Because there was no food to eat. So it was a very, you can say, very poor situation. And even in the African countries, this drought and all is quite pronounced. In Sudan and all these countries are there. It is quite, you can say, a regular feature. So hazard profile, it is of course a slow onset. It doesn't occur very quickly as an earthquake or a volcanic eruption. It is a prolonged duration. It is widespread. Of course, it is not localized to one particular region, like an entire stretch of say region like in the Rajasthan and all. The entire northern belt or northwestern belt is affected by the drought during the summer seasons. Drought and aridity are again synonyms. The social and economic cost of drought are greatest in climates close to the margins of agriculture and pastoral productions, that is in subhumid areas rather than the hyperhumid or pure-humid areas. That means what? The drought effects will be more, the social as well as economic. Social means there will be loot, there will be, the social fabric will be disturbed. Why? Because people will not be at ease. There will be no food for living, for their, you can say, there will be no food, no proper water, so they will be living a disturbed life. And again the people will have many, you can say, quarrels and many issues at the lesson, as well as economic losses will be there more in the, you can say, the subhumid areas rather than hyperhumid or perhumid areas or very humid areas. Generally perhumid can also be called as humid very humid areas. So you can see this is the aridity index by which the drought is defined. You may have studied these two terms in irrigation. P is the precipitation and P is the evapotranspiration. Do you know these two terms? Especially the civil students may be knowing. P is the precipitation and this is evapotranspiration or expected or probable evapotranspiration. Are you understanding what is evapotranspiration? Am I audible or my voice is gone?
Yes, sir, you're clearly audible.
I'm audible. So these two terms are there. So aridity index is defined by the precipitation which is there for that particular year and the expected or probable evapotranspiration. So this, whenever a question is, if a question is asked on the drought, of course the definition you have to write and the aridity index you have to write. Of course there are many indices which are there for defining, but this is given by the United Nations, so it should be, it is a very apt definition. So what is the aridity index? Precipitation divided by the probable evapotranspiration. So you can see evapotranspiration means, again, what is the evapotranspiration in that particular year which is expected, and what is the precipitation which is occurred. If the precipitation by evapotranspiration, this is above 50 or 50%, is generally said that the climate is humid. But as the ratio decreases, what happens is it becomes dry, subhumid, then semi-arid, arid, and then hyper-arid. Hyper-arid is a very grave case. So again, this particular drought is said when the regions become hyper-arid or arid. So again, you can see these are the cases, like in the months, different months, the precipitation and evapotranspiration are there. This is the expected profile which is going to be there throughout the course of the all the years. So this is the annual probable evapotranspiration. This is the annual precipitation. If it is less, what it is said, there is deficit in the rains and then it will lead to drought. If it matches, like in this case it is matching, sorry, in this case it is very less. You can see the blue region, it is very less. So what will happen, there is deficit and again it will lead to substantial problems. Again you can see in this case in 1 month the deficit is removed, but still in the other. So again the drought can be defined again by, it can be, drought can be for the entire years, like in the African countries, no? In Kenya and all these regions, sometimes there is no rainfall for even 18 months. So it becomes an year long drought, or sometimes it is just case specific. Like in India and all, we have drought for the specifically for the 2 months of summer and all. So this all things are there. So again, some definitions are there. 15 consecutive days with daily precipitation total of less than 0.25 mm. In Great Britain, it is called as drought. United States, at less than 2 mm rainfall in 48 hours, it is called as drought. So actual seasonal rainfall deficient by more than twice the mean deviation. So deviation, again it is calculated, standard deviation is calculated. So actual seasonal rainfall is deficient by twice more than the standard deviation. If more than 2 sigma deviation is there or less than that rainfall is there, then it is called as a drought. So again, period of 6 days without rain. So different regions have different, you can say, definitions depending on the climate of that particular region. In Libya and all, annual rainfall less than 180 mm is known as drought. So again, drought has again indices: standard precipitation index, a probabilistic index based on rainfall amount compared to normal for the same period. Then Palmer drought severity index is there, and Palmer crop moisture index is there. So these are indices which are there. So of course, in India, the drought is pronounced in specific regions. Drought were very frequent during ancient days. Of course, with various irrigation systems, in irrigation systems which post-independence the various Indian governments have done, many irrigation facilities are there, due to which the impact of drought has been reduced, because people get water for their particular production and all production of crops, and against the severity is reduced. What we are doing is we are building the capacities of people. Hazard is there, drought is there, the temperature, heat temperature and all that are going to be there. But when you are building the capacities, what is happening is the vulnerability is reduced, and hence the disaster is avoided or reduced. So droughts were very frequent during ancient days in India. It led to many famines in India. Bengal famine in the 19th century killed almost half million people, that means 50 lakh people. At that time, the population itself was not that much. Na? Today, the population of India is almost 135 crores. And in that time, the population was quite less, say 20 crores or 25 crores, it may be. In that 25 crores, also 50 lakh people are killed. That means almost you can say a substantial amount. No? It almost was say some 2%, 1.5 or 2% people were killed. Rajasthan, Kutch, Madhya Pradesh, Madhya Maharashtra, Madhya Pradesh, even Chhattisgarh, and all these regions are prone to droughts every year. So of course there are severe consequences. So drought damages direct consequence is the loss of income, social dislocation. And in Marathwada and all these regions, people come to Mumbai and say Pune and all these regions. Why they come to Mumbai and Pune? You may have seen with their all cattle and goats and all, and sheep, they just move towards the metropolitan region because it is not possible for them to live there because of lack of water, because water is the most basic essential necessity of any human being, and water itself is not there. They have to migrate for some time to different places. So you may have seen many people with their herds, they just come and settle like temporary settlements in the urban centers or just in the periphery of urban centers. Famine, malnutrition, death, these are all consequences of drought. Indirect causes of loss of rural and urban revenues, of course, economic disaster is there, fire hazard, loss of water access, these all problems are there. So temperate climate influences blocking of high zones in the zone of westerlies and all. So this you can say the climatic regions or the climatic winds are there. So in the temperate climates, generally we are in the equatorial or you can say tropical climates. So seasonal tropical climates influence of ITCZ position of monsoon position. Again, this is the location or this is the type of winds which flow, which bring monsoon. In India, generally the southwest monsoon winds and the northwest monsoon winds they bring the monsoon. So any difference, there are two effects basically. There is the El Nino effect and La Nina effect. So these two effects, they cause the we can say the drought or the precipitation more, or you can say the less precipitation or more precipitation is dependent on the position of winds or the you can say direction of winds or the intensity of winds. So humid tropical climate generally influence of El Nino, southern oscillation effect, and La Nina also is there in this region. So you can see in Australian again region why these bushfires and all are there so much pronounced, because you can see how the changes in just 1 2 years in July 1997 you can see how much arid region was there, how much arid region was there, because there was the El Nino effect or less precipitation was there, and the La Nina effect was there in just the same month July 1998, just a different year, month was same. You can see how it was, how different climatic conditions were there for a particular region. This is especially in case of Australia, and hence the bushfires and all these are there. Again, in India and all, you may find a similar climatic condition which are there throughout the different years. But in Australia and in some parts of Africa, this region is this problem is there. So effects of 1997-98 drought in Indonesia, again 20%, 30% reduction in rice crops in eastern Indonesia. So again, villagers were scattered, many people died. So these all reasons are there which are very prone to disaster, such type of disaster. This is erosion and deposition, abundant farm in Kansas, Australia. And again, you can see the droughts. There is quite this dust storm and all is there in Australia, even Gulf countries and all this type of this problems are there. So again, so many problems are there. Asian dust storms have been blamed for increased mortality in urban areas in Taiwan and South Korea. But island dust as a significant hazard to human health. Again, many case studies have been done in China, in India. Mostly, it is done in the you can say the regions where the drought is more pronounced. Now you will see something about the cyclones. Everybody is able to see the screen? Hello?
Yes, sir, it's visible.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, if any
Yes,
time
sir.
my voice is just breaking or some screen is not visible, just let me know because it happens, na? Sometimes due to network issues. I may be just going on speaking and you may miss some part. So again, cyclone. This you can expect because there was a recent cyclone and this is a regular phenomena. So a question likely more likely on cyclone is expected than a question on drought. So you can just note down. A cyclone is a storm that involves the movement of warm, high pressure and cooler, low pressure. Warm, high pressure and cooler, low pressure. You can remember always the high pressure waves will be warm, whereas the low pressure wave will be cooler. This movement of air causes rotation that picks up speed and causes a and creates a tunnel. So generally, a cyclone is a low pressure area. The cyclone center often known in a mature tropical cyclone. Tropical cyclone means the cyclone which occurs in the tropics. Means 23-degree north latitude and 23-degree south latitude. The cyclone which occurs in this belt, in the equatorial belt, that is known as a tropical cyclone. Of course, we will see the more definitions of different type of cyclones. A cyclone center, often known in a mature tropical cyclone as the eye, is the area of the lowest atmospheric pressure. So generally the eye of the cyclone is known as the lowest atmospheric pressure and which leads to a you can say severe the pressure low tropical pressure is there. So what will happen is there will be a funnel. This will be created and the cyclone effect will take place. The initial extratropical low pressure area forms at the location of the red dot in the image. So you can see an image. This is formed. Low pressure area is formed, and what happens is the turbulence effect is created in the surrounding areas. Tropical cyclones form when the energy released by the condensation of moisture in rising air causes a positive feedback loop over warm water. So again, cyclones are generally created over waters and then they move towards the land part. You can see how the cyclones are created. Low pressure belt is there. So energy is released by the condensation of moisture in rising air causes a positive feedback loop over warm ocean waters, and what happens is a loop is formed and then the cyclone takes place. So again, there are type of cyclones based on the location or where in the particular globe they occur. There is a polar cyclone which occurs in the poles. Polar low cyclone is there. Extratropical cyclone just outside the tropics. Subtropical cyclone and tropical cyclone. The cyclones which are there in our region, the most severe cyclones are the tropical cyclones. So in India and all, we face the tropical cyclones. The polar cyclone is a low pressure weather system usually spans from 1000 to 2000 kilometers in which the area circulates in the counterclockwise direction in northern hemisphere, that is anti-clockwise direction, and clockwise direction in the southern hemisphere. So polar low cyclone is there. It is just found in that area, in the Greenwich and all. In the Greenland and all, in the northernmost hemisphere or in the southernmost hemisphere. So polar low, it has horizontal scaling less than 1,000 kilometers and exists now more than a couple of days. They are difficult to detect using conventional weather reports. Then the extratropical cyclone is there, generally in European continent and all, and in Canada and all. These type of cyclones are there, even in Russia and all. The descriptor of extratropical refers to the fact that this type of cyclone generally occur outside the tropics. That means outside the Tropic of Cancer and Tropic of Capricorn, in the middle latitudes of the planet. These systems may also be described as mid-latitude cyclones due to their effects of formation or post-tropical cyclone. So extratropical transition has occurred and are often described as depressions or lows by weather forecaster and the general public. These are everyday phenomena which, along with anticyclones, drive the weather over much of the earth. So these cyclones are very important for driving the weather. Subtropical cyclone is a weather system that has some characteristics of a tropical cyclone and some characteristics of an extratropical cyclone. They can form between the equator and the 50th parallel. So this subtropical cyclone, again, it has a look. The extratropical cyclone, its effect or severity may not be that much. Subtropical cyclones may have characteristics of both tropical as well as extratropical. So this is generally a satellite image of a subtropical cyclone. This is the most, you can say, problematic or the worrisome type of cyclone, that is a tropical cyclone. A tropical cyclone is a storm system characterized by low pressure center and numerous thunderstorms that produce strong winds and flooding rain. So name, of course, name of cyclones are given by the local, you can say local names are given depending on the area which they occur. Of course, the name up to future years also up to 2024, 2025 names also have been already defined. So these common names we hear na Nisarga, Amphan, Vayu, Hudhud, Kyar, Failin, Fian, Bulbul, Aira. These all cyclones are there in the Indian subcontinent. Of course, these cyclones are there in the Western countries or Western names are there. Tracy, Larry, Alex, Jacob, Katrina, Caro, Itna, Jack, Jim. These are names they are defined for their cyclones. So major factors for responsible for cyclone disaster manifestation of humanity. Manifestation means the activities or you can say anthropogenic activities of human beings. So manifestation of humanity overloading the Earth's ecology due to global warming. The human effect on climate is a major factor of cyclone. This is a major factor because of the global warming. The temperature is increased again. The pressure is changed. The low pressure belts are created, and the winds they form a funnel, and the cyclone is caused. Ecological, because cyclones were not that much severe in the earlier days. Very few cyclones. No? One cyclone in say 10 years or all this were observed. But now if you see the cyclones are very frequent. No? We had an Amphan cyclone in the west in the eastern coast in India, and we had again your Nisarg cyclone in the western coast. So it was quite severe. Within 1 month, only two cyclones hit India, and they were quite severe cyclones. Psychological impacts of various kinds. Use of land is again it is changed. Use of water, effects on biodiversity, use of non-renewable resources, production of greenhouse gases, production of other unacceptable pollutants. The destruction during recent decades of coastal forests removed a barrier which formerly mitigated the effects of waves and winds from cyclonic storms. So destruction was caused. Many mangroves and all these protection systems were there. They were uprooted, and again, if they will take time to be again again you can say built to the full capacity. Poverty again, of course, the standard of protections is housing and infrastructure in an inappropriate way for regions subject to frequent intense cyclones. So it causes damage to property, and of course the poor people they don't have good homes or you can say strong home, and again if their houses are damaged, so again with savings or the less savings and all, the total loss turns a disaster into a catastrophe. So severe disaster is known as a catastrophe. Precautions should be taken before a cyclone. Keep a list of emergency phone numbers handy, including numbers for your local police, fire, ambulances, state emergency services, etc. Clear your property of any loose items that could become missiles during extreme winds, of course, because unattended objects are there, na? Especially the steel objects or the pointed objects, they may lead to you can say they may just be like the missiles. Find out how and where to turn off the power, gas and water supply. This should be the prime thing. No? Whenever a cyclone and all is there, no? You should turn off the power, should turn off the gas and water supply so that the hazards or you can say the vulnerability can be reduced. Store your important documents, example, wills, passport, photos, Aadhaar card, birth certificates in a fire waterproof container or safe deposit box. Check that you have adequate household and contents insurance and which hazards are not covered by the policy, and all these all things you can do. Prevention at a time when the cyclone hits, disconnect all electrical appliances. Generally what we do now, we watch TV and all and these things. Now again it may again lead to fire and all, na? Because if severe cyclones are there, it may cause problems. Turn off the gas, fuel your car and park it under some solid cover. Pack an evacuation kit, including an emergency kit, warm clothing, essential medications, valuables, papers, photos, and keepsakes in waterproof bags. Stay inside and shelter in the strongest part of the building. Continue to listen to a portable radio for updates and advices. Beware of the calm eye of the cyclone. Of course, before there was a famous saying na, in Hindi. What is that? Anybody? तूफान के पहले anybody can say
How much is
Huh? Nobody? There is a saying na, that the calmness should be of the before the storm should be है ना, should be observed, or it should be observed. So if the wind suddenly drops, don't assume that the cyclone is over. Violent winds will soon resume from the opposite direction, so you should be very careful. If you are driving, or you are, whether you are on a bike or whether you are in a car, stop, but you should be well away from the sea and clear of tree, water, power lines and water courses. Stay in your vehicle if you are in a car. If you are in a bike, you just get down, park your bike somewhere and take a safe shelter. Preventions to be taken after cyclone: don't go outside until officially advised it is safe to do so. Check for gas leaks and don't use electrical appliances if wet. Keep listening to your local radio, because your this will not work, no? Your TV and all will not work, so you have to rely on radio for official warnings and advice, or you can even use your mobile phone nowadays. If you did not evacuate your home, but again the problem with mobile phone is the towers and all, they may be working, because cyclone and all, it may it may impair the, or it may reduce the or reduce the, you can say it may impair, it may damage the entire system of the mobiles. So if you did evacuate your home, don't return until advice. Beware of fallen power lines, damaged buildings, bridges, and don't enter flood waters. Don't make unnecessary telephone calls, which will lead to panic. So this is just one overview of earthquakes. One of my student in disaster management had given PPTs, because in the previous batches, na, the students had this some work marks. So I had told everybody to pick PPTs. So some of my students have very nice PPTs. I'll just share some of them with you. So earthquake. This is just an overview of earthquakes. We'll of course see the structural point of view in the next presentation. So earthquakes. Earthquake can be defined. All of you are able to see this? Some presentation
Yes, sir.
do not open, so I'm just inquiring. Okay, fine. Earthquakes can be defined as the shaking of the earth caused by waves. Again, there are three type of waves: P waves, L waves, and S waves. So again, the depending on the waves, na, the intensity and all that will be defined. You may have studied in geology in detail about this type of waves. Have you studied in geology about earthquakes? I'm not sure if you have studied, because in our days we had this earthquake and all in detail, na? But in this current syllabus, I'm not sure if you have studied. You have studied about the earthquakes in detail in geology?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So we'll discuss more about the disaster management perspective. How the earthquake occurs and all that will not focus much. So again, earthquakes can be of three types: tectonic earthquakes, non-tectonic earthquakes, and induced earthquakes. Induced means the aftershocks. So factors of vulnerability: man-made factors due to human beings. Na, we have made settlement in the line of fire of the earthquake. So then maybe people may be vulnerable. Location of settlement: inadequate building practices and regulations. People are not adhering to building codes which the municipality or government has prescribed, which leads to more vulnerable to earthquakes. Dense concentration of buildings, too many buildings, especially if you go in southern Mumbai and all. Na, some regions are quite dense. The old buildings which were created without any building bylaws, so they are still there in their place, and which causes severe vulnerability of people. Absence of warning signs, these are there. Mortality and morbidity rate, of course it is more. How it is more and all we'll discuss in the next presentation. Foreseeable needs and what we have to remember, that we'll discuss. So again, this presentation is there on earthquakes, which is my Mr. Charles Squathorn of Junji Kyono University. Of course, he had three presentations, out of which we are discussing about the first. So these are some major earthquakes which are listed in the past. You can say 100 years or so, or past century. You can say, not even past century, say some 30-40 years. I'll just pause the attendance. Fine. Just a moment. You can see, is the screen visible?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
So you can see the Indian Ocean tsunami, na? Because it was an earthquake, which was, of course, we will discuss this in detail in the next lecture. The Indian Ocean tsunami, it killed almost 3 lakh people. Because not only the earthquake was there, but it was accompanied by the tsunami. So this earthquake was the third largest earthquake ever recorded. Of course, there may be earthquakes which may be of higher magnitude also, but discussing or talking about the recorded earthquakes, this was the third severest or third highest recorded earthquakes on the Richter scale. So again, these all earthquakes are there in Gujarat. Also, Bhuj earthquake is there. In Latur, also in Maharashtra, this earthquake killed almost 10,000 people. So all type of earthquakes are there. But this particular, you can see the numbers. Almost 3 lakh people lost their lives because it was not only the earthquake was there, but also it was accompanied by a tsunami. So again, these all things are there, which will not discuss into detail because it is not the part of this particular subject. This is a more of a geological aspect, but in disaster management, we have to deal with how we can warn the people and how we can save the people. This is more related to our subject. So plate tectonics, subduction, fault, these all things are there in case of earthquakes, seismotonics, magnitude, intensity, vulnerable and risk management. Fine. So plate tectonics, again there are various plates we may have studied in geology, the civil students especially, the mechanical students just remember there are some plates which are inside the earth's crust, which what they do, they are at various shapes which hold the earth together. The shape of the plates, they hold the earth together. What happens is the plates are moving. There are various plates which are moving. So there is the Eurasian plate, there is the, you can see, Philippine plate, South American plate, African plate, Indian plate is there, then there is Burma plate. So these are plate are there, they are moving by every millimeter, say for some years. So again the seismogenesis is there, where the, again in geology you may have studied how the seismogenesis and all this occurs. So again, what happens? Faulting is there. It may lead to tsunami. Shaking of the earth may cause damage. Again, shaking tsunami may cause damage. Landslides will be there due to liquefaction and all. Faulting will also result to fire. So there are various compounding problems of an earthquake. So measuring of an earthquake, generally earthquakes are measured by instruments called seismometers or seismometers, and seismographs are produced. From several measurements can be used to triangulate where the now various instruments are there, various seismometers are there at different parts of the, you can say, different regions where scientists use to triangulate, like they try to zoom down or narrow down to the location or position of where the earthquake began. The corresponding point on Earth's surface is called as the epicenter. The more the ground moves, the greater the energy release, of course. So in the Indian Ocean tsunami, it was said that all earthquakes which occurred in the last 100 years, the Indian Ocean tsunami, it almost released 1/8. That means almost 12.5% of the energy it released. You can imagine the magnitude or the severity of that particular earthquake. The total energy released by earthquakes is estimated from all instruments used to calculate the magnitude, overall size of an earthquake. The common magnitude scale MWI or MW this slash is known as moment magnitude scale. It is generally used to define the magnitude of the earthquake. So moment MW, 6 earthquakes are damaging and some buildings may collapse. 7 are damaging, many buildings may collapse. 8 and larger extremely damaging and many buildings may collapse. In the same way, landslides, liquefaction, other agents of damage are worse the larger the magnitude. So again, seismic intensity. Again, there are various measures. Mercalli scale is there, which also known as commonly known as Richter scale, and other systems are also there. So again, you can see different systems are there. So generally, what is measured? 9 or 10 is the highest this can which can be measured. But in the case of Indian tsunami, it was told that some at one or two places even 12 intensity of this was measured, which was not again proved. So you can see if the intensity is one, it is scarcely felt. You can see how the this increases. Very destructive, devastating, complexity. 10 Richter scale is completely devastating. So again, this also defines on MMI scale, people do not feel, and if you see on 12, almost everything in is destroyed. Objects are thrown in the air, ground moves, waves, ripples. So generally, this is not observed. Generally, the earthquake of 7 and 8, we say that it is a quite severe earthquake. So again, the damage to buildings, damage to properties, and vulnerability again due to proper improper codes and all, due to lack of earthquake management structures, or lack of earthquake management practices. Generally, now these practices of earth base isolators and all these things are there, where which reduce the impact of the earthquakes. In Japan and also many earthquakes are there, but still the hazard or still the destruction is less. Why? Because they have incorporated various building codes or various measures in the building codes which allow the structures to be, or which make it compulsory for the structures to be earthquake proof. So vulnerability is the degree or damage to loss caused by general given level of seismic activity. So vulnerability depends on material, age, condition, and structural layout of building or any other structure. Weak, brittle materials such as adobe or unreinforced masonry and older reinforced concrete buildings are very likely to be damaged in an earthquake. They have high vulnerability. Steel, wood, and newer reinforced concrete buildings are less likely to be damaged. You all know. So there are two approaches. Again, one is detailed engineering model where you study the various using various StatPro and all these measures, various other tools to study the earthquake effect. Another is the statistical approach where you observe the historical data, you observe that what was the damage to what type of buildings in the past and which type of buildings which will construction in the future, which materials should be used, so that the so both approaches are there. Generally, we are now shifting our focus more in the detailed engineering model because we cannot predict what the intensity of future earthquakes will be there. So you can see more stronger building, wood frame and all is there, it will cause the less damage. And as you see in uncoarse rubble masonry and all structures are there, almost 80% structure will be damaged. So all structural damage start off the earthquakes having higher scale of 6 and above. Earthquake risks again, assets may be damaged, people, property, profits, and all this may be damaged, loss in the reduction of value of an asset. Of course, if an earthquake is occurred, people may not buy the property in that particular region, or they may be by purchasing power may be reduced. Risk is the uncertainty of loss. Risk or a loss estimation is quantification of earthquake loss and is basic step in managing earthquake risk. Again, you can see loss, human effects, injury, repairs, this all these are there. Earthquake effects, faulting, shaking will be there. Built environment will be destroyed, human environments, people, organization, institutions, cultural, and this all risk will be there. So how can we reduce the risk? The hazard should be reduced. So damage or vulnerability can be reduced, and the loss can be reduced. So of course there is a earthquake risk reduction program. So maintain, and we should always, this is a cycle which is go on. Initial assessment of the problem, what is the problem at that particular region, analyze the earthquake risk, identify, analyze, evaluate, treat the risk, develop mitigation program, how the building should be made, how people should be evacuated, implement the mitigation program, and then again the risk reduction program can be taken place. So this is all of course a disaster mitigation problem. So earthquake risk reduction, the goal of earthquake risk reduction is not to find a solution, but rather to find the best solution. Best implies decision making. So as a disaster managers, we should be able to take decisions quickly so that the effect of earthquake is reduced. Decision making consists of two basic steps: estimate the risk. So before and only you are ready for the risk, as examine mitigation alternatives. Estimating the risk involves defining the problem, quantifying the current risk, and identifying further action is needed. Examining mitigation alternatives requires selecting the basis of analysis, identifying alternatives, screening alternatives, and choosing a decision method. Last step in earthquake risk reduction is implementing the alternatives. Of course, which alternatives we should take or how they uh, risk reduction proper plan can be made. Earthquake risk reduction management program consists of following steps: funding, program management, implementing the plan, risk transfer, and emergency plan. So of course, hazard vulnerability assessment should be done. Mitigation and the program, this emergency risk reduction program should be done. So about the structural measures which will be there, we will discuss in the next lecture.